Hi, y'all. It's Barbara from Divine Creative Love, and I'm so excited to bring you this new tutorial on First Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 16 through 18. So you can see I've got some notes that I've made on this chapter. So verses 16 through 18, it says, "Always be joyful, never stop praying. Be thankful in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you who belong to Christ Jesus." So I've got this Give Thanks stamp set, as well as some older stamp sets with the words like "Pray Without Ceasing" and some letters. And I thought this Give Thanks stamp set was so appropriate because right now it's at the end of October going into November, so it's a nice fall theme for this time of year. So we're going to start off a little differently than I usually do. Usually I would do the background first, but for this page I'm stamping the leaves first. I'm stamping them in archival ink so they'll be waterproof, and that way I can color around the background and color the leaves a different color, and that the leaves won't get smudged or anything. And I should mention I already gessoed the page just so I can paint on it and not have to worry about like page wrinkling or like getting things bleeding through it. So if you've never done gesso before and you want to learn, I will link to that video right here. So you'll notice it's not the easiest thing to get a good coverage with the archival ink. So my first attempt here, it didn't make very good contact with the page, either maybe because I didn't ink it very well. So you see from that point I was turning the ink pad upside down to see if I could get better coverage, and that did seem to work better. I think part of the problem was that my Bible page wasn't like providing a very good foundation for the stamping. So like that one, it didn't get very good coverage on that one either. So for this one, I really inked it really good. And then you'll notice when I press it on the page, I actually put my thumbs underneath the edge of the Bible and kind of pressed from underneath too to get better coverage, and that worked out so much better. But I think also the archival ink pad, it's kind of a stiffer ink pad. It's not as cushy as some of the pigment ink pads that I like to use. So it is a little bit harder also because of that to get good coverage. So you just have to work a little bit harder to get a good stamped image with the archival ink. And it's also a little bit harder to clean, so I do recommend using the special archival ink cleaner on it. And since I didn't get a very good stamped image on some of those leaves, I'm just going in with the Pigma Micron pens, which are also waterproof, and then I'm just coloring over the lines to get a better image. And the Pigma Micron pens are just so handy for things like this. They come in different tip sizes, so you can see there I switched to a thicker tip for the outside edge of the leaf and used the thinner tip for the little lines inside the leaf. But these are just two of the tip sizes that they come in. You can get ones that are super fine and then ones that are a whole lot thicker that you can use for line drawings or like coloring over stamped images if you don't get a good coverage on the ink. They really are one of my favorite Bible journaling tools just because they're so versatile and useful for things like that. And I'll link to both of those tip sizes below so you can get like the exact tip sizes that I'm using if you like. So now that those are done, I'm using another of my favorite Bible journaling tools. The gelatos are so versatile. You can use them dry like this. I was just testing the different colors on the index card there. So you can use them kind of like that as pastels. Just kind of rub them around. Or one of my favorite ways to use them, of course, is like watercolors. And you can see some of those colors are looking pretty good. I did not like that really dark one, but several of those colors would work really good for the leaves. And then I decided to pull out another set and then find that blue color for the background. So it looks kind of like a blue sky with the fall colored leaves. So to paint with the gelatos, all you need is a palette or like a paper plate even would work. Just something that you can smear the color onto, and then just add some water to turn them into watercolors. So I like to use a spray bottle, just spray the water onto the palette, and then for most of the page I'm just going to use a flat brush, and I'm just coloring around the leaves to create that kind of light blue background that looks a little bit like a sky. And you'll notice when I get close to the edge of the leaf, it's not running or bleeding at all, which is one of the great things about the archival ink. It's so waterproof, it just does not move at all. And then, of course, since I gessoed the page, it's not bleeding through or like making the page weak. It makes the page a little bit stronger so it can withstand the watercolor. And at this point, I decided to get a smaller brush to color in some of the details around those leaves. And I know it looks really pale colored. It's a little bit darker in person than it is on the camera, but it's a really pretty light blue. And also with the gelatos, you can use them a little bit more concentrated, like add less water and then have like a more stronger color if you want. So then there I was just adding the color in the margin and kind of around all the leaves with the flat brush. And at this point, I actually had lost track of my other brush that rolled underneath the Bible cover. Took me a second to figure out where it went. So here I'm just filling in the details around that leaf. And then there I was just adding some more color around the leaf at the top of the page, and then finishing up with the more color around the leaves at the bottom of the page. Okay, so now once that first layer is done, I like to use my heat tool to go ahead and dry the page quickly so I can then move on to the next step. Of course, you could let your page dry, just air dry for 30 minutes or so, however long is needed to let the page dry. And then our next step is to start coloring the leaves. So I decided to use this light green color for a few of the leaves. And again, a little bit of water goes a long way for the gelatos. Doesn't take much to turn them into a really pretty watercolor. And you can see how pretty that green is. So I didn't bother to go around the inner lines, the lines inside the leaves. I was just coloring all over the lines inside the leaves and just making sure that I stayed inside the outer lines of the leaves. And at that point I realized I actually missed a spot in the background. There was a little spot between those two leaves that I had forgotten to color in with the blue background. So I just went in and added a little more blue color to do that. And you'll notice there's always like little mistakes or things that I have to go back and do over again or fix, or things that just don't always go as expected in Bible journaling. I always hear from people that they say, oh, I'm too scared to get started, or I'm afraid of messing up. And if you watch me for very long, like I'll mess up on things and have to go back and fix things. So it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have little, things that you have to cover up or go back and redo. That's just part of the process. So don't be afraid of that. It's okay to mess up sometimes. So for this other leaf, I wanted to add a little bit more darker green color to it. So I started with the light green, and then I went and added some little more darker green. That kind of set it apart from the other leaves, made it look a little bit different. And then I dried it, and then I actually went back in again and added more of the darker green, just to give it a little more darker green color. And then I'm starting in with this little like darker kind of rusty coral red color that I thought was a good fall leaf color. And this one, it went on very pale when I first painted it on, so you'll see here in a minute that I had to go in and do another coat to make it a little bit darker, because you can barely see that it's like pale orangey red color there. Doesn't look dark enough to be a leaf. So I just dried that first layer and then went back in a second time with some more color to make it darker. And you'll notice I got a little bit too much color on the edge of the page where that leaf stem was, so I just kind of dabbed it off with a little piece of paper towel. And then starting over with a different color of this dark brown for another leaf color. And same thing happened with this one. It was a little bit light, the first coat. So I did go back in and dry it and add another coat to make it darker. So you can see how much better that looks with another coat. That just shows up much better. And now that one's done, we just have one more leaf color. And since I wanted to make each leaf a different color, using this other like dark kind of bronze color for that last leaf at the top of the page. And that one actually turned out to be really dark on its own, so that one only required one coat of that color. You can see that's a really pretty bronze kind of color. So that's turning out really great so far with all the different leaves and the kind of fall look. And I was just cleaning off the palette to put it away. And then I actually noticed that my Bible had gotten a little crooked, so I had to straighten that out a little bit. That's better. And I wanted to start out with the words "pray without ceasing" from this stamp set, just because that would be the middle of the margin. And then I wanted to make sure that I kind of centered everything. And it took me a few minutes to figure out which color I wanted to stamp it in. I had these two browns, and I couldn't decide which one I wanted, which one would look better on the page. But I decided with this caramel toffee color, which actually turned out really good. And you can see how much that easier that was to get a clean stamped image with the pigment ink than it was earlier with the archival ink. The pigment stamped heads are so much more spongy, and it's a lot easier to get a really good ink coverage with those. And then for the word rejoice, since the NIV translation actually says rejoice always. So this Bible, it's the NLT translation, the New Living Translation, and it says be joyful always, but I decided to use the word rejoice just because that's the NIV, the New International Version, is another of my favorite translations to read. So I chose the letters for rejoice, and then it was pretty clear that they weren't going to quite all fit in the width of the margin. So I just started with the middle letter and then worked my way back to the beginning and then to the end to make sure it was going to kind of fit. And then kind of just made it a little like haphazard, bouncy, not really much rhyme or reason with how I positioned the letters, just however they would kind of fit. And it really worked out kind of cute, actually. So you can see I just put each letter just wherever kind of made sense. Didn't really have a lot of rhyme or reason to it, except just making sure that they were going to all fit, in the margin. But it actually worked out really cute. And then for the last part of verse 18, I just had the give thanks stamp that I wanted to use. So I stamped thanks first, and then the little word give. I thought about stamping it in the center, but then I decided it looked better off to the left a little bit. So the next step I wanted to do is to highlight some of the other verses in chapter 5. So not just verses 16 through 18, but there were also some really other great verses that I wanted to make note of. So the first is verse 11, which says, "So encourage each other and build each other up, just as you are already doing." And then verse 14, which says, "Brothers and sisters, we urge you to warn those who are lazy, encourage those who are timid, take tender care of those who are weak, be patient with everyone." And then lastly, verse 21, which says, "Hold on to what is good." And the next thing I did is I took some metallic gel pens and I just wanted to fill in the open parts of the letters pray and give thanks. So I took this kind of rusty reddish pink color and colored in the word pray. And then I chose a light green gel pen that kind of matched the leaves to color in the words give thanks. And I didn't mention this earlier, but the pen that I used for the words from the verses in the leaves, that was a gold Una Posca paint pen. And it actually, you can tell it didn't show up very well in the leaves. So actually after I did the video recording, I went back and wrote over them with the black pen just to make the words show up better. But you can see like they don't show up very well against the leaves. So the next thing that we're going to do is something that I always do, is outlining or underlining the verses that we're focusing on. So in this case, I took a glitter gel pen to outline verses 16 through 18, since that's kind of our featured verses. And I was just using the index card to get a good straight line on the top and the bottom. And then for the other verses, verse 11 and 14 and 21, I took that same gold paint pen that I used earlier and then underlined each verse. And all of these verses that I chose to focus on, they kind of all have that theme of encouraging and lifting each other up. So, like, encourage each other, be patient with each other, always be joyful, pray for each other, be thankful, and, hold on to what is good. So they're just really good words to live by. And at this point, I realized there was that blank space that was kind of bothering me above the word rejoice. It felt like something was missing, something needed to be there. So I took that little kind of berries stamp and just made the stamp in the same color as the words. And that was the finishing touch that I felt like it needed. So at that point, I decided to go ahead and remove the protective deli sheets that I use to keep the pages protected. And there's our finished page. I hope this Bible journaling and Bible study inspired you to think about what 1 Thessalonians 5 verses 16 through 18 means, what it means to be joyful and to pray without ceasing and to be thankful, and many of the other good things that Paul mentions in chapter 5. And if you liked this video, be sure and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any of my future videos. I'll see you next time.